Okay, so this section is over graphing inequalities and then shading the region that makes a true statement. So first we're going to determine if the boundary line should be solid or dashed. And then we're going to determine if the shaded area is above or below the boundary line, or inside or outside the absolute value shape. Okay, so the boundary line is going to be dashed, dotted, if it is only greater than or less than inequalities. When you draw your graph, draw your line or absolute value shape, you're going to use a dotted line when it's only less than or greater than. If it is less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, you're going to use a solid line. Okay, so that's how you know which one to use. So let's look at number 1. This is just a line, x plus 4y is greater than 2. So the first thing I'm going to do to simplify it a little bit is rewrite it in slope-intercept form. So I want to solve for y. Okay, so I'm going to subtract the x over, and then divide everything by 4. And the only time you want to flip your inequality is when you multiply or divide by a negative. You don't want to flip the inequality when you add or subtract. Okay, so I'm getting y equals negative 1/4 x plus 1/2. So my intercept is at 1/2. I'm going to plot that point. And then I'm going to count my slope of negative 1/4. So I'm going to go up 1 and to the left 4. I'm going to go ahead and make 3 points. So I'm going to go down 1 and to the right 4. Okay, so is this one going to be a dotted line or a solid line? Dotted, right. Okay, you need to be real careful when you're drawing your graph. Make sure it's neat and you can see your shape really well. So there's my line. Now I need to decide if I'm going to shade above that or below it. So sometimes people get confused with what direction to shade. Okay, if you're not confused about it, if you can deal with just y is greater than, that's fine. You can shade if you're comfortable with that. If you're uncomfortable, if you're unsure, then let me show you how I like to do that. Okay, I'm going to pick a point that's not on the graph. Like in this case, 0, 0 is not on the graph. And I'm going to plug it in to the original problem. So in this problem right here, 0 plus 0 greater than 2. So I'd wind up with 0 is greater than 2. Is that a true statement? Is 0 bigger than 2?
No.
No. This is not a true statement. It's false. So what that means is I would not shade in the area where that point is. I would shade on the other side of the line. And that would be your answer. That's all you're going to have to do to answer those problems. Just graph and shade.
Yeah, I remember doing this last year. So like, it's greater than, it's always going to be on top. Okay, so let's do something.
For the lines, Yep. Okay, so let's do another one. Let's look at number 4. You guys go ahead and work number 4, and I'll do it up here. Because I divided by this negative 2, and there's an understood 1 in front of the x.
Oh.
Shh. Okay, so this graph, you're going to use a solid line because it winds up being greater than or equal to. You had to divide by this -2 in front of the y, and so you had to change the inequality over. But it is equal to, so I use a solid line. Now I'm going to determine which side to shade on. I'm going to go ahead and substitute 0, 0 in again because that point is not on the line. So I'm going to put it in the original. Okay, 0 is less than or equal to 4, which is true. So that means I'm going to shade where that point is on the graph, and it's going to be above.
Wait, so if it's not true, you shade on the
Right, if it's not true, you shade on the other side of where the point is. If it is true, you shade on the side it is.
Okay.
Okay, so here's 0, 0.
Yes.
Okay, so I plugged 0, 0 into the inequality, and it made a true statement.
Wait, so you put it into the original?
Uh-huh,
Oh.
yeah. I put it into the original problem. So since that 0, 0 made a true statement, I shaded where that point is on the graph. Okay, let's look at number 7. You guys need to get quiet, please. Number 7 is absolute value. So what kind of shape are we going to have? A V. Okay, so am I going to use a dotted line or a solid line? Solid. Okay, so since it's absolute value, let's make an XY table. Table of values. The first point for X that you want to use is whatever is going to make this inside the absolute value equal to 0. So what number should I use for X first?
1.
Okay. When I plug 1 in for X, 1 minus 1 is 0. Then plus 2, y is going to equal 2. So let's plot that point first. And now I'm going to pick a point on either side. So for example, on the left side, if I pick -1, that's 2 units to the left. What point should I pick on the right?
2.
3. I want to go 2 units on the right, so I'm going to pick 3. I'm mixing it up a little bit. Okay, so let's substitute a -1 in here. -1 minus 1 is -2, but the absolute value of that is a positive 2, and 2 plus 2 is going to be 4. Okay, when I substitute the 3 in, 3 minus 1 is 2. Absolute value of that is a positive 2, and then 2 plus 2 is going to be 4. Okay, so let's plot those points. And I'm going to draw my lines. And now I have to decide if I'm going to shade inside the V or outside the V. Okay, so again, 0, 0 is not on the graph. It's not on the shape. So I'm going to use that point and plug it into the original problem. So I'll get 0 is less than or equal to absolute value of 0 minus 1 plus 2. So is 0 going to be less than what's on the right side? Okay, that is true. So since that is a true statement, I'm going to shade where that point is, which is outside the V shape. I use the origin right here. I plugged it into the original problem, and this is a true statement. So since it's true, I shade where that point is.
So if it's false, you shade it inside?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's try number 8. You guys do number 8 and I'll do it up here. So the first thing you want to do is make up a table of values. We're doing number 8. Okay, so I have my shape drawn up there. It's going to be a dotted line because it's only greater than. The vertex is at 0, 0. And so I picked a point on either side of that vertex. I used -2 and +2 for my x. So I got my two other points, and I drew my shape. So now I need to decide if I'm going to shade inside or outside. So I can't use 0, 0 on this one because the absolute value shape uses that point. So I've got to use a different point. I can use the one next to it, like right here on the x-axis. What is that point?
0, 1.
It's 1, 0, right? If you put your x first and your y second. Okay, so I'm going to substitute that number in to the original. So y is 0, greater than 1. Is that a true statement? No, that's not true. That's false. So I am not going to shade where that point is. I'm going to shade inside the absolute value because that's what's going to make it true. Any questions?
How do you know what to do here?